It is my pleasure to introduce to you a friend and a business colleague, Senator Mike Mazzei.
Thank you, Dave. I am lucky to have you as a business partner and friend. And I'm delighted to be with you today. As some of you have heard, I suffered a catastrophic back injury several years ago from a car accident. I'm still in the middle of various medical rehabilitation work and procedures, but I'm grateful to my Lord in heaven that I've made a bunch of progress and I get to hang out with you Rotarians today. President John, thank you also for this adapted stage for Mike Mazzei, who likes to move around and stay loose. So I really appreciate that. And I'm also grateful to each of you in this wonderful organization that does so much to help so many people here in Tulsa, and wonderful organizations like the Tulsa Boys Home, which our company also is supporting this year. Now, whenever I talk politics and finance, I like to tell stories. So let me tell you just a little snippet about Mike and my wife, Noelle, who always wanted to have a big family, but we had some health challenges that got in the way. We ended up adopting a daughter from Russia, and after miscarriages and spending lots of money, we did one last gasp at fertility, and fortunately, the initial results looked kind of promising. The doctor told us to expect twins. We thought twins would be cool. So we're in the doctor's office for that first ultrasound, and the doctor finds a good, strong heartbeat, and he finds a second strong heartbeat, but wouldn't you know it, he found a third strong heartbeat. And he looks at my wife, Noelle, and he says, "Noelle, what do you think? It's going to be triplets." And she said, "Well, I think I can do triplets, but I'm not so sure about Mike." Mike wasn't so sure about Mike either, as I was trying not to pass out, and the doctor looked at me and said, "Mike, what do you think? It's going to be triplets." And I literally, in that moment, said, "Well, Doc, at least I got my money's worth." Now, the people of Oklahoma are understandably frustrated about several issues in which Oklahoma ranks, unfortunately, kind of low in some important criteria. And they're asking, are we getting our money's worth for the taxes we're sending down to Oklahoma City? And so what I want to emphasize today is we need in Oklahoma serious financial management reforms and major policy changes so we can focus on top priorities of more college and career-ready graduates and more high-paying jobs. To do that, we're going to look at education first. Second, we're going to talk about job growth. And third, we're going to spend a little bit of time on the state budget. So first, let's consider education in Oklahoma. Recently, a national ranking group called Quality Counts put out their summary of all 50 states, and they gave Oklahoma, unfortunately, a D+, and ranked our education system 47 out of 50 states, and Mike Neal, my buddy back there, is shaking his head. And this certainly just is not acceptable in a state where we strive for excellence. Our high school graduation rate is 71%, when it should be in the mid-80s. We don't have enough college and career-ready graduates. And when I say career-ready graduates, I'm referring to students who successfully go through a certificate program through one of our vocational institutions. Now, talking about career-ready workers is extremely important because we know from all sorts of economic studies that the more college and career-ready graduates you have in your economy, the higher amount of jobs you have, the higher level of income, salary, and wages you have. So how do we get more of those? Well, a very fascinating book was written by a lady named Nancy Ripley. The book's called The Smartest Kids in the World. And she wanted to study some of the best educational systems in the world and she chose South Korea, Poland, and Finland. And to do this study, she followed the real-life experiences of international exchange students who went from U.S. public schools to these public schools overseas. One of those students was a real-life young lady named Kim who attended Sallisaw Public High School. And through Kim's eyes, we get to see her experience a very difficult transition because the amount of work and the level of work was much more intense, and she had to spend a lot of time on homework, more so than she was used to. Now, she rose to the occasion and ended up doing quite well. We also see through Kim's eyes how seniors in Finland, where she was going to school, had to go through intense amount of preparation for an end of high school test to see if they had completed a certain level of mastery and had some critical thinking skills. And then also we learn from the author that in Finland, teachers are extremely highly respected, and that particular career path is seen as noble and highly regarded as being a doctor. So if we want to go from worst to best in the state of Oklahoma, I suggest to you that a new umbrella of educational policy must first include designing Oklahoma academic curriculum to be more rigorous. There's a current system that's trying to be implemented right now through the State Board of Education. I have followed it a little bit, and I'm suspicious and skeptical that it's going to raise the bar high enough for the 21st century economy. Second, we need to require accountability with end of high school exams. The legislature needs to decide whether this exam is going to be the ACT or some other test or process. And then third, we need to elevate teaching to a very highly regarded profession. All of our economic, or I should say education studies, indicate that the number one factor in a student's success is a highly capable teacher. So we obviously need to pay our teachers more in terms of keeping our best and brightest, and I'll come back around to that when we talk a little bit about the state budget. But I do want you to remember that one of the educational systems that rose to the top because of 10 to 15 years of focus on these three principles was Poland, after being destroyed by communism for 50 years. And in my particular mind, if the Polish can do it, we Oklahomans can do it. Now next, we want to talk about job growth. The average family income in Oklahoma is $47,000 per year. That puts us 40th in the United States. And I've never really understood that because we rank 28th in population and we have large oil and natural gas resources like some other more wealthy states. Part of the problem is we have a competitive disadvantage when you look at our tax code. The Nonpartisan U.S. Tax Foundation teaches legislators all over the country that the best tax code is one that has relatively low income tax rates and sales tax rates and very few special interest loopholes or special exemptions that make the overall system inefficient. This particular organization ranks the Oklahoma tax code as 33rd in the nation in terms of being business and job friendly. And let me sort of put it to you like this. Who in here owns a small business? Would you raise your hands, please? Okay. And I'm looking at this particular gentleman right here in the blue sports coat. stand up, sir, and please give me your name and company. Okay. Is your company an S Corp or an LLC? S Corp. Okay. Now, during my time in the Oklahoma Senate, we lowered income tax rates from 7% to 5%. So, as your S Corp is a pass-through business entity, how much has your business income reduced over the last 10 years? I'm asking you to do a little math after lunch. I'm sorry. Okay, well, if rates have, I'm kind of putting you on the spot, but if rates on the personal side have gone from 7% to 5%, although over the years your income tax liability may have gone up and down just because of the numbers, but your tax rate for your income has gone down 29%. Now, here's the real important question. Over that same time period, since the legislature rolled out a special tax credit for having kids, which is in addition to the normal personal exemption, how many more kids did you and your wife decide to have? Because the legislature decided to roll out kind of a $50 tax savings. No more children. Okay. Well, thank you very much. I apologize for putting you on the spot. We have a very interesting book for you written by yours truly, Mike Mazzei. It's not on the Amazon bestseller list yet, but I hope you'll find at least the first page enjoyable. If not, there's a QT card in there that will allow you to get some coffee and keep you awake while you read my book. Now, the important thing to remember here is we've lowered rates, but then we doled out this sort of silly child tax credit that now costs $23 million a year and doesn't do a thing to create any jobs. And that is sort of the exact opposite of what we need to be doing. Now, as we look at the tax code, there are 4 or 5 very important incentive programs that do actually create jobs. Sometime Mike Neal and I will be happy to give you a lecture on that. But one of those, for example, is the Aerospace Engineering Tax Credit Program. I was the author of that in 2009, and representatives from Boeing will tell you that that program was instrumental in their decision to bring 600 high-paying jobs to Oklahoma. And recently, a cost-benefit analysis was done on that program for the new Incentive Evaluation Commission, and that report indicated that the cost has risen to about $7 million a year, a little bit more than that. But the labor income from that program is now at $270 million a year, and the overall economic impact from that program is at $1.2 billion a year. That's the sort of thing that a financial analyst says is a good return on investment. And what we need to do in this state is go, okay, how do we replicate that for other areas of need? For example, we don't have enough doctors in this state. The stats show that we rank 46th in the country in terms of the number of doctors per 100,000 residents. But we could easily develop a new program for keeping our best and brightest doctors in the state, modeled after the successful Aerospace Engineer Tax Credit Program. So, as we look at a new umbrella of job growth policy to move from worst to best, the first item that I would propose to you is extremely important is to, 1, reform the tax code to be more business friendly. Second, we must establish incentives for recruiting doctors, as I just mentioned. And third, I want to mention the Governor's Quick Action Closing Program, which I authored in my, what year did we start that, Mike Neal? I authored that in the Senate as well, and it's a deal closing program that, for example, was used as part of the package that successfully attracted the new Macy's distribution center in Owasso for some of the infrastructure needs that were put together. Now, because of our budget problems, we haven't been putting any money into this fund to chase business opportunities against some of the other states in the region. And that's kind of like taking your business, think about all you business owners, where, you know what, revenues are kind of tough. I'm not going to put any money into marketing sales to get more business. It's just nonsensical, and no matter what, we need to find a way to put money into that program every year so we can chase more jobs. Remember, Ronald Reagan said to all of us, you are Americans, it is your birthright to dream great dreams. And like you, I have great dreams for my kids and grandkids. Those triplets, by the way, their birthday is today and they're turning 18. So, for education progress and job growth progress, we obviously need money. And the state budget, unfortunately, has been a mess for 4 years in a row, even before the drop in oil and gas prices. We're facing another structural deficit where there's not enough revenue to cover last year's expenses. Last year in the legislature, it was $1.3 billion. This year, it's $870 million. And part of the reason is that over 1/3 of the money, when it comes into the Oklahoma Treasury, goes off to special dedicated projects, and the legislature has only control of not quite 2/3 of all the revenue that comes in for the actual budget. So one of the first transformational financial management changes that has to happen soon is to first redirect revenue back to the general appropriation process. This stream of off-the-top money that goes into other buckets partly explains why education funding since 2009 for K-12 schools is a negative $95 million, even though student enrollment is up by 40,000. Politicians across the state will come and say to many people, maybe even you here in this room, education is our top priority. It gets 52% of the budget. Well, when you look at the numbers a little more closely, particularly the K-12 numbers, in 2009, K-12 got 35% of all of the revenue coming in, not just this leftover amount that goes to general appropriations. Today, or this year I should say, that percentage will be 27% of all the revenue coming into the Treasury. If you fix that problem right there, or revert it back to what it used to be, that's $400 million more dollars for education and teachers. The second financial management structural change we need ever so quickly is to eliminate ineffective and obsolete special interest programs. The wind power tax credit right now has become overly generous and something this state can no longer afford. The recent cost-benefit analysis that was done on that program shows the annual expense has gone up to $113 million. The job or labor income amount that I referred to earlier on the aerospace program is only $78 million per year. That makes a financial investment expert like Dave Moore go, ugh. And it tends to discombobulate me when I was walking around the halls of the Capitol. Now, as my team can tell you, during the day, after events like this and this rehab process that I'm going through, I have to lay down some, rest before I get to the next meeting or the next activity. And I get pillowhead a little bit, and I'm a vain politician now. So when I get up from my rest, I'll try to fix my hair or ask my assistant, is my hair okay? One day I was so tired and discombobulated, I literally said, do I need to put my head back on? I don't really know where that came from, but I feel like legislators need to put their heads back on. We can't afford programs like this tax credit deal anymore, and there are other exemptions and other tax credits that we need to get out of the books. I'm going to be posting shortly a list that could easily come up with $300 million, and that's money that can go to schools, teachers, fixing the budget as quickly as possible. Third, we need to obviously increase teacher pay to the regional average. Right now, compensation, health care, retirement, a teacher's compensation in Oklahoma is $44-some thousand. The regional average, just for our section of the country, is $50,000. So that needs to be corrected as soon as possible. And there are ways within the education budget to help things out a little bit. My friend and former colleague, Senator Gary Stanislawski, has introduced legislation to deal with this strange administrative phenomenon in Oklahoma where we have over 500 school districts. There's about 100 K through 8th grade school districts that are or could be, I should say, easily merged with their independent school districts where the kids go to high school, and that could easily save about $10 to $20 million just at that level. Keep in mind, a state like Wyoming has 9 school districts. So financial management changes are incredibly important for us to pursue a higher level of excellence. So we've talked about education, we've talked about job growth, and we've talked about the state budget. What I mostly want to emphasize is that if we have major policy changes for education, we'll get more college and career-ready graduates. If we have the right programs for job growth, those college and career-ready graduates will have more and more high-paying jobs. As we have more and more high-paying jobs and we deal with the state budget with greater or smarter financial management systems, we'll have more stable, recurring revenue that will feed right back to education to help us get more college and career-ready graduates and more high-paying jobs. So even though I'm done with my 12 years in the Oklahoma Senate, I am still passionate about challenging the forces of the status quo so we can get help for our schools and our teachers and better job growth. And for that reason, we created a new policy organization called the Oklahoma Opportunity Project. We hope you'll look up the website to learn more about us. I'd like to briefly introduce the organization's executive director, Allison Griffith. Allie, please stand up. If you'd like to get our monthly newsletter on topics such as we've discussed today, please hand Allie a business card as you walk out, and we'll be sure to get you on our email newsletter list. Now, one of my favorite politicians was Teddy Roosevelt, a man of action. Roosevelt came from family wealth. He believed in free market capitalism, but even with that, he knew that for individual, regular, ordinary, hardworking Americans, he had to challenge the status quo and huge special interest monopolies of today to so-called bust the trusts. He did that, and that created more economic freedom and opportunity for ordinary Americans. And so today I want to remind you of Teddy Roosevelt's one of his more famous comments, which said, "The credit belongs to the man actually in the arena, who at best knows the triumph of great achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly." Thank you for having me today. I really appreciate getting to spend some time with you.